Okay, we're good. Sorry about that technical difficulties. And um, if you, I don't know who it is, Mrs. Zimmerman, but I think if you can mute yourself, there's like scratching. Um, so my name is Pat Harrison. I'm the owner and beekeeper at HarBee Beekeeping. Um, HarBee Beekeeping is a concierge beekeeping service where I keep bees mostly for people. So your bees, your honey. I'm the beekeeper. But but today I'm gonna talk about if you want to get into bees and be the manager of the bees themselves. And we're gonna talk about, is beekeeping really right for you? Sometimes it's not, and people figure that out, kind of thing. Um, so we're going to talk about who's in the hive itself, um, and kind of like a misunderstanding a lot of who actually occupies that hive. Then we're going to go into the general and basic life cycle of an individual honeybee, an individual worker bee, and then we're going to talk about what's next. What I have coming up in this series of classes. This is going to be one of 8 free online classes, and then there's 3 field days that are $65 per field day. And then we're gonna I'm open to answer any questions on basic anything, because this is the first day. So who's in the hive? There's really 3 classes, or 3 groups of individuals that are distinctly different. You have the queen. The queen is the only fertile female. She is the mother to all of the bees in the hive. Um, and she's there to be the mother of all the bees in the hive. She's an egg laying machine. She's kind of the ovaries of the hive, to produce more of the workers. And then she also controls the pheromone and temperament of the colony itself. Um, the worker bees that we have are non-fertile females, and they do everything. They do everything from building the comb, feeding the developing bees, foraging. Um, the queen doesn't do anything other than lay eggs. Worker bees do everything. And then there's drones. Drones are the male bees. They don't add to the production directly of the colony. So if you were to remove all the drones from a hive, it's not gonna starve to death. It's not gonna fail. Um, but they add to the overall population of the bees, of the population, meaning the bees in New Jersey, the bees in Bergen County, the bees in Vermont, that the drones go out and they mate with the queens of the other hives in the area. We're going to talk a little bit about that, though. So the queen of the hive, um, as you see here in the lower left, she's much longer, almost wasp-like, no hairs to be able to collect pollen. That long abdomen stores all of the eggs that she'll lay in her 1 to 3 year lifespan. Um, and so she's storing all of the eggs that she will lay in her life. Um, the worker bees kind of given her the room that she needs to lay those eggs inside the cell. And the worker bees are constantly feeding her, cleaning her, grooming her, um, making sure that the egg laying machine of the hive is well oiled. Now I say that she's the only fertile female, and that workers are non-fertile females. That really means that they're genetically distinct. They're the same. They have the same genetics. If I were to go into the hive and take the queen out, they will raise their own queen, And that's what you see here in the top right. These little peanuts are queen cells because this queen in the hive died. Um, she died for whatever reason it was, but they're out here trying to make their own queen, because because they can just feed the larva a different food, turn on some genes, turn off other genes, and then bam, you have a queen. Versus not feeding royal jelly, and then you have a worker bee. I can also take out an egg from one cell and put it into another hive that has no queen, and they will raise my frame here that has 30 cells into 30 queens. I can manipulate the biology into making my own queens. Um, so that's pretty cool stuff, that to understand that they're non-fertile females, you can do some cool biology. So like I said, workers do everything else. The fact that they do everything else, that's going to take up the majority of this talk. I'm going to talk about how a worker becomes a wax builder versus a forager versus a nurse bee, right after I talk about drones. Because the worker bees are really most of what you're dealing with. Um, like I said, drones, they don't add to the direct production of the colony, but they add to the overall health of a good, healthy bee population. So part of a, northern New Jersey breeding program, maintaining good, um, a good amount of drones in your hives, make sure that your neighbor down the street has a well-mated queen. A well-mated queen lays many eggs. Many eggs on a frame produces a lot of honey. And so this box that's 9 high really is probably 8 boxes full of honey. It's probably 200 pounds of honey on each of these hives. 2018 was an awesome year in this bee yard. So I want to talk about, we're going to talk about the life cycle of that worker bee. And the real importance of that is because there's really 2 life cycles that you need to think about when you're managing a honeybee colony. We're going to focus on the individual bee today, and then Thursday is the seasonality and the seasonal life cycle of a honeybee colony. So the honeybee colony being these set of boxes, how it goes from having 9 boxes high to being 2 boxes high. And that's all part of the seasonality and the seasonal management of the hive. And then there's the smaller, the individual bee's life cycle that you also need to understand. And understanding the life cycle is extremely important, and it's kind of taken for granted that for other things that we would do. So it would be really silly for me to say that, the roots of the tomato plant are in the soil that soak up water, and then the leaves photosynthesize and create energy. The flowers turn into the fruit after it being pollinated. Like, that's a really first grade example, because we understand the structure of a basic plant, but we weren't taught in first grade the basic structure of who's doing what in a honeybee colony. People say that the Bee Movie was good enough. It sure wasn't. So as the individual goes, all insects have the 4 stages in front of you. For the honeybee, it's an egg is laid by the queen in a cell. That egg hatches after 3 days, turning into a larva. That larva would be compared to a maggot if it was a fly. It would be a caterpillar if it was a butterfly. But we call it a larva here. Worker nurse bees will come along and feed these larvae as they develop. They're a larva for 6 days, and then the worker bees on the outside, the adults, will cover up the cell with the piece of wax. Then that pupa will spin a cocoon inside the cell that she's developing in. This would be the chrysalis stage if it was a butterfly. Maggots and flies have their own very quick stage inside whatever like corpse that a maggot is doing maggot stuff. Um, and then after another 6 days, she'll chew her way out as an adult honeybee. So if this was a butterfly, a caterpillar situation, it would be egg, caterpillar, cocoon, adult butterfly. But for honeybees, it's egg, larva, capped brood or pupa, adult honeybee. And this all happens within the same cell. Drones, queens, workers all have these three parts. As far as drones, queens, and workers, the only difference is really the timing that happens. A queen is a larva for only 5 days. A drone is a larva for 6.5. And I was very wrong. I said 6 days as a pupa or capped brood, and it's really 12. So this is a frame of capped brood. Brood is a term used for really all animals, as like the young. The bird's brood is protected in its nest by its mother until it's hatched, and then it's even fed for a couple days. You know, the young bees, the young bees are brood, and a robin would come and feed that brood, those fledglings, kind of thing. If it was a human, the human brood stays at home until they're 25, until they're financially sustainable, kind of thing. So brood is just a term for really like young offspring. And this frame here is all the capped brood, all the capped pupa of workers. So that's like the quick life cycle of how they become egg to adult. What we're going to talk here, like I said, I'm going to go back to workers and talk about how the almost division of labor within workers is part of their life cycle. It's part of their life cycle, and because age really has a big part of determining what that worker bee is doing at that time. So yes, genetics have some part of it, but the natural progression of time as it goes by makes it will hatch, it will emerge as an adult bee, be a nurse bee, and then after a week or two, it will become a hive building, wax producing worker bee. It will be a guard, and then ultimately become a forager. Foraging is the most dangerous part of the job, and that's where your bees are really going to be dying, kind of thing. So understanding that it's a time thing is also really key, because if I were to do something where I lock away the queen, so all of the adult bees age while not being replaced by younger ones, I will run out of nurse bees and only have older wax producing guard and forager bees, and I'll have a deficit in bees to take care of the young. So we're going to break down on go into nurses. So I said what I was about to say. Nurse bees feed the larva from a particular gland right as they emerge. The particular gland is that gland there. You know, it's a $10 word. So, and that's that gland that it will turn off after two weeks, making it that bee unable to be able to feed larva. So a worker bee would go and consume pollen and honey, and then using that gland that it will secrete larva food. Here in the top right, you have your nurse bees feeding the queen, also fed from that gland. Hive builders and wax producers. Wax is actually secreted from the abdomen of the bee. I was lucky enough to see that, which is pretty cool. So these little flakes here are little bits of wax. After this photo, I touched the back of the bee, and those flakes stuck to my hand. And so what would happen inside the hive is a bee would go over and consume honey, and then start producing wax off of the glands in its back of the under abdomen. Another worker would come over, pull that piece of wax off. They will manipulate it into the wax comb that you see here. Left up to their own demise, bees would make almost the honeycomb and honey frames, much like what we give them. But this was the photo that I was able to grab, where you see here is the wax inside of a wall after bees are they took up roost in this person's wall and made a colony, and so they yeah, they produce that wax. So after the larva food producing gland turns off, the wax producing gland turns on. And then after a certain amount of time, that gland turns off and they'll become a guard bee. So right here, you see two bees confronting a third. Well, I have arrows here. And they're touching antennae, and they're making sure that she belongs in this hive, or at least making sure that she's coming back with a full stomach of nectar to add to the production of the hive. And they wouldn't allow her in if she was empty-handed and not from the colony that this is. Videos never work in presentations, so I didn't even bother. But after this photo was taken, they did fight because she wasn't part of the hive. And it was a time of year, it was late August, when it's kind of like the drought season where there is no nectar. So a hive from down the street might rob the resources of a weak hive, up the street. They would be able to rob the resources if there wasn't a sufficient amount of guard bees at the door, kind of guarding. There's also a bunch of guard bees when you open up a hive. So there's quite a few bees on the top bars of this box. And then after just a little bit of smoke here, you can see that the bees kind of turn away and they go down into the frames. A second puff of smoke would push all of the bees down into those frames. So this was one puff of smoke, two puffs of smoke. The smoke that you're using is diluting the alarm pheromones of the guard bees. So if you were to crack open the hives, they say, intruder, go attack them. All right. But that smoke dilutes that alarm pheromone, enabling you to kind of act invisibly inside the hive. Foragers, there's three things that a bee is foraging for, and this is actually where the genetic thing comes into play, and which is really important. If you were someone that's writing a lot of checks and you wanted to do a research project on the genetics of honeybees, it would be neat to see if you can breed bees to only forage for nectar and never pollen, kind of thing, or same thing with water. It would, but the thought is that queen mates with 20 to 25 drones, 25 males, stores that sperm, and all the worker bees in the hive are all half sisters. So one group of half sisters only forages for pollen. One of the group of half sisters only forage for nectar. One of the half sisters only forage for water. And they really just focus on one thing when they go out in their lifetime. They do bring back what the hive needs. If it was the hive is in a swamp where it's dry, or they don't need water in the hive, you're going to see less bees foraging for water, kind of thing. But that's really where the genetic comes from. Inside the hive, pollen is brought in, pushed into the cells of the wax cells of the comb, and kind of fermented in a way to be able to be consumed by the bees themselves. Like that protein needs to be adjusted a little bit. Nectar gets brought back and it gets dehydrated into honey. So nectar is about 80% water. It gets dehydrated. There's some enzymes added that turns into 15 to 18% water. And that's what we call honey. If it was too high of a water content, it would ferment in a jar. And the USDA wouldn't call it honey if it was, I think, over 25% water. Water's brought back into the hive to cool it down. So this is a hive on an extremely hot day after some boxes were removed. So this is a bit of an exaggeration. But what these bees are doing actually are fanning water that was brought back and put into the hive loose into cells. And they're fanning that water, evaporating it off, kind of the same way that we sweat. The water gets secreted from our skin and it evaporates off our skin. The bees are bringing water back into the hive and evaporating it off the hive. So this is kind of the next step thing. Thursday, I want to talk about the seasonality, the seasonal life cycle of the hive. This is the kind of time of year that people need to get really thinking if they're going to get into the hobby. The first field day in April, I'm going to have bees for sale, a nucleus colony, and that's something that we're going to be talking about. But if this is something that you're thinking about doing as a hobby, as you learn, you kind of get to put your order in so that bees aren't sold out by the time that they're ready, kind of thing. And other than fixing technical difficulties, I want to hear your suggestions. I recently put the syllabus of the course on the blog of my site so that it's always available. There's links to the suggested reading. I created a suggested reading to start, and that's gonna have kind of like a before reading before I give a talk. So when I come to the disease and pest talk, for you to have read a little bit about what I'm going to talk about would allow me to go into it a little bit better. So if you have some real grievances, definitely email me them. This is the suggested reading. The bee books all attached in the syllabus online. It's Keeping Bees by Malcolm Stanford. He's a great guy. Very good author. I think this book is broken down in a way where it's like really digestible, the information. American Bee Journal and Bee Culture are monthly magazines. They both have they would both be normally be sending out free copies to in-person beginner beekeeping classes, so that there would be a stack for you to grab on your way home. But instead, the American Bee Journal is offering a April 2020 free to everybody, and that's also linked in the syllabus on the website. And I kind of just want to note that this is a free class because I do sell honey and candles online. It's not just me right now. For now, it's Manning is my store manager. He fulfills all the online purchases. And with the great holiday season that we had, I'm able to offer this class for free, and I'm not charging you right now, kind of thing. So, and that's because of honey sales. Those are my two emails. Both get looked at twice a day, kind of thing. And I kind of want to unmute you to ask some questions. I'm gonna stop sharing, stop recording, and if you have any pressing questions, I'd like to answer them. Mrs. Zimmerman? Yeah.
Yeah, I had talked to you before about, do I have enough space in my yard? Do I have the right configuration? I don't think my backyard is as large as your backyard. Is that something you would be able to come over and take a look and say, yeah, I think you could do it, or maybe not, but you could still learn about beekeeping?
Yes, because you're down the street, and I can come and take a look, kind of thing.
Okay.
But I'd say that they keep bees like their air conditioning units in Brooklyn, hanging out of windows. And so there's just some adjustments that you would do if you are dealing with tight quarters, kind of thing. New beekeeping regulation, I don't think for a new beekeeper has a to the fence line. There's You would have to set up a flyway barrier if you're getting close to the fence, kind of thing. And that's something that I'm going to talk about in the third lecture, which is going to be on the 18th. I'm going over the New Jersey Beekeeping Regulation, keeping bees in populated areas, and then we're going to talk about the equipment. So I was using words like frames, boxes of bees, things like that. And I know that's a bit of jargon. It's kind of hard to not use the jargon and explain. So it's kind of like a time where it's like tough. But on the 18th, I'm going to talk about the equipment and the keeping bees in populated areas, kind of thing. So to address the peoples that aren't down the road that I can help.
Okay.
Anything else? I'm going to send an email out. Did anybody not get the email? If anybody didn't get the emails that I sent out, send something to me so that I can put you on the list so that you can get the proper links. And for Thursday, 6 o'clock, I'm gonna make sure things are squared up 100% so I don't not show up to my own class and show up somewhere else virtually. And kind of have like I subscribe to a system where I can send you out a blast kind of thing. So if you didn't get those emails, make sure you send something to me. And if you were to think of a question that comes up now, later, or you have a question, yes, you can ask that question. You can just unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, I have a quick question. I do live in an apartment, and my plans is to buy a house because I want to do the honey, and also I grow microgreens. I
Mhm.
like both. So, for example, but I was reading if I buy 1 acre, how many I can have, how many bees I can have in 1 acre? Is it's go by location, go by zip code, by zone? I didn't read the syllabus, so I'm sure you're gonna. I don't know if I
Yeah,
can.
it's a real sliding scale towards. I'm pretty sure at 1 acre you can keep 12 hives,
Okay,
and then under a quarter acre you're limited to two
4.
hives,
Okay,
and then between that it's like it's like based down on like every quarter acre. Um,
and that's go under like a farm, the farm taxes. You don't know,
oh, so when you get into farm taxes and stuff,
but you're
you
like be a
need more
beekeeper.
than
It's not the
five
same.
acres. Well,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So if that's a complicated thing. Yeah, you
Oh,
need two
okay.
years of revenue. So I'm protected under farm assessment because I make enough revenue and I have 2 years of it to be a farm, even though I'm not managing
Okay.
land. And it's its own presentation.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why. Because I
So
always look because I know I need to check with the neighbors because if the bees fly, they fly you need
yeah,
to there's a whole thing. So I'm like if I buy 1 acre, how many can I have? Like
yeah, you can have too many on 1 acre. But
you
like
can or cannot.
you can, yeah. And
Okay.
it's weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
Okay. No, it's just, we're gonna
yeah.
get there. I was just wondering for how many acres is in New Jersey.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I wish I'm still working out with Metropolitan Farms. I'd like it so that um, you can sponsor a hive kind of thing, where I'd manage it and then like and manage it for you somewhere, kind of thing. Still working on packages like that, where because you're in an apartment, um, you don't have a place to put it. Can you get bees in April and then move them to your new house in June, because I've been managing them from April to June, is something that I would I hope to pan out and have ready for somebody like you, definitely before spring.
Yeah, because
Um,
I'm planning to move out this apartment in September. And I say,
mhm,
I'm gonna buy a house.
cool,
I'm doing microgreens. I'm gonna do the bees and I'm doing this. But I'm like, how
cool.
many acres can you have a by law? You know?
Yeah,
I don't know if it's a
yeah,
law.
that third
They'll
presentation is
look up
where
that.
we're gonna talk about that. Um, I
Oh,
also
okay, okay.
including in the email that I'm going to send out is going to be a closed Facebook group. So I have HarBee Beekeeping Facebook group, Facebook page where I'm selling honey. I'm trying to sell candles, kind of thing. This Facebook group that I made is um, is for beekeeping questions. So instead of me getting a beekeeping question through email and answering that person through email, if I were to answer your question, then Erin doesn't learn from that question, kind of thing, because that would probably be something that she didn't know and that I answered, kind of thing. And then I'm gonna be posting into it, so like tell me, take a picture of your hives and trying to keep you involved with it. The whole point of the structure of this class is that I found that there's a lot of issues, even with some of the best speakers in the state, giving some of the best bee talks in the state for 2 days in February. And then you buy your bees in April, and then you're off to go, kind of thing. My point is here is I want to kind of string you along and keep you involved for the entire season, so that come September, when you're managing bees and don't know what you're doing, kind of thing, because it's your first year, and that's totally reasonable. I'm there to help out, kind of thing. So that'll be all in your that email blast. So is that it? If you can, fun. All right. Does everybody like this kind of time? Almost 40, 45 minutes. I thought that was perfect. Made it Thursday, so the next time is Thursday. So if you were to have a glass of mead, it's still kind of the weekend. So, all right.
Are they all on Thursday? All classes are on Thursday, correct?
Yeah, so it's all going to be, yeah, the rest are going to be on Thursday.
Okay. I do have a question. Let's say if you don't want to buy bees or like start your own thing, but you kind of just want to learn, and then maybe like be an apprentice or like work for another farm. Would people like hire people, but like I don't
mean,
have that experience, so like how does that work?
I'm not hiring, kind of thing.
Right.
The field days that I'm going to be
Mm,
having, you don't have to have bees at home to join those field days.
right.
So you'd be totally welcome to it. The point of those field days is, the 3 times a year, you're going to come to my apiary. I'm going to
Right.
show you what to do in my apiary, and then you can go home and do it in your own bees. If you
No,
don't have
right.
bees
But
at your home.
what if I want to like get more hands-on before I take that step? Are there like do you know like other people who are like, do the people volunteer? Do people like
So there's
hire?
Mevo.
Sorry?
There's Mevo Earth. Just typed it into the chat. They're a not-for-profit organization up in Mawa that have a couple hives.
Mm,
They do volunteer work. If you were, they have a summer internship where it's like 3 days a week,
mm,
where you can probably get into bees. Other than them, I'm not completely sure.
okay.
And as of right now, it's only 3 field days. I hope to do more for more people, kind of thing. So like, if those field days, I'm going to limit to like 15.
Mm,
So it's going to be tight, and it's going to be, intimate, where other days I'm going to have, bigger groups, kind of thing. So
okay. All right, cool. Thank you.
if that's it, I'm going to head out and end this meeting. So I'll be posting the recording of this and emailing you probably tomorrow morning. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. Have a great
Thanks.
night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.